You learned early how to stay quiet when the room felt heavy. Not because you wanted to be invisible, but because you understood something most children don't. That emotions can spill, that silence can keep things together. You might not have had the language for it then. You just knew when to step back, when to listen instead of speaking, when to be careful with your presence. People often say childhood is meant to be carefree, but for you, childhood felt like something you had to manage, something you had to survive with awareness, not innocence. And maybe no one ever said it out loud, but somewhere inside, you realized growing up fast wasn't a choice, it was a response. You may have been praised for being mature, for being responsible, for being so understanding for your age. Those words sounded like compliments, but they carried weight, because what they really meant was that you adapted. An adaptation, when it happens too early, leaves marks. People often assume that children who grow up fast are strong by nature, that you were just naturally wise, naturally calm, naturally capable. But that's only part of the story. The other part is quieter, and it's the part we rarely talk about. Growing up fast usually begins with sensing instability, emotional unpredictability, or an unspoken need in the environment. Children are not logical analysts, they are emotional readers. They feel before they think. So when something feels off, you don't question it, you adjust to it. Maybe you learned to read moods before faces, to anticipate reactions before words were spoken, to understand what was needed without being asked. That's not maturity in the traditional sense, that's vigilance. Your nervous system learned to stay alert, to scan, to stay ready. Psychologically, this is what happens when safety becomes conditional, when love feels tied to behavior, when peace depends on you staying composed. So you did. You became the calm one, the helper, the listener, the child who didn't need much, and from the outside it looked admirable, but inside it often felt lonely. Because when you grow up too fast, you skip something important. You skip being held emotionally. You may have learned to hold others instead. People like you often struggle to ask for help, not because you don't need it, but because needing feels unfamiliar. You learned early that needing could complicate things, that expressing hurt might add pressure, that staying composed kept things moving. So you became self-contained. Psychologists call this early emotional self-reliance. But emotionally, it feels like learning to walk without ever being carried. You survived, but survival isn't the same as softness. You may notice now that you struggle to relax fully, that even in calm moments, something inside stays alert, as if peace could be temporary. That's not anxiety by chance. That's conditioning. Your nervous system learned that stillness required readiness, that quiet moments were not always safe moments, so even rest came with responsibility. People who grew up too fast often feel older than their peers, even when they're young, even when they're successful, even when they're smiling. There's a gravity in you, a seriousness that doesn't come from pessimism, but from experience. You've seen what happens when things fall apart, so you learned to prevent it. And yet, there's a part of you that wonders what it would have been like to be carefree without guilt, to be messy without consequences, to be vulnerable without needing to manage the aftermath. You may not consciously think this, but your body remembers. This is why people like you often feel tired without knowing why. Not physically exhausted, emotionally worn, because you've been holding more than your share for a long time. You might notice that relationships feel complex. that you attract people who lean on you, who feel safe with you, who rely on your steadiness. And while part of you values that role, another part feels unseen. Because being strong all the time doesn't leave room for being held. You didn't learn early how to be taken care of. You learned how to take care. That shapes attachment. It shapes boundaries. It shapes how close you let people get. You may crave intimacy, but struggle with dependence. Want connection, but fear burdening others. So you become the one who understands, the one who adjusts, the one who carries emotional weight quietly. Not because you want to, but because it's familiar. People often misunderstand this pattern. They may see you as distant, independent, emotionally controlled. But beneath that is someone who learned early that emotions needed structure, that chaos needed management. That's not coldness, that's adaptation. And it deserves recognition, not judgment. You may also notice moments of grief that don't have a clear source. A sadness that comes without a story. That's not weakness. That's delayed processing. Children who grow up too fast don't stop feeling. They postpone feeling. There wasn't space then. So the emotions wait, and they surface later, when life finally slows down, when safety increases, when the nervous system realizes it's allowed to soften. That's often when the weight hits. You might find yourself longing for simplicity, for quiet, for spaces where you don't have to perform strength. This isn't regression, it's restoration. Your psyche is asking for what it missed. It's important to understand this clearly. Growing up too fast did not make you broken. It made you adaptive, but adaptation is not identity. You are not obligated to remain the version of yourself that survived. There is a difference between strength and armor. You learned armor early. Now, part of healing is learning when it's safe to set it down. This doesn't mean undoing your resilience. It means expanding it, allowing yourself to experience softness without fear, letting others witness your uncertainty, permitting rest without justification. These things may feel unnatural at first, even uncomfortable. That's normal. When you've spent years being the steady one, stillness can feel exposed. But exposure doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it means truth. And truth, when met with safety, becomes healing. You don't need to go back and relive anything. You don't need to blame or analyze endlessly. What matters now is awareness. Awareness that the child who grew up too fast did the best they could with limited resources, with limited protection. And that child deserves compassion, not pressure to stay strong forever. You are allowed to redefine maturity, not as self-denial, but as self-attunement, not as constant composure, but as honest presence. Growing up too fast taught you how to endure. Now you get to learn how to receive. And that doesn't erase who you are. It completes you. You don't have to prove resilience anymore. Your nervous system already knows it. What it may need now is reassurance, permission, gentleness, to let life feel lighter, to let emotions move without control, to let yourself be human without responsibility attached. This is not losing strength, it's reclaiming balance. And as you sit with this, know this quietly, deeply. You were never weak for growing up fast. You were responding to the world as it was. Now you are allowed to respond to the world as it is now. And that world may finally be safe enough for you to slow down.